Welcome to the Disabled Podcast, starring your host, Christian Reitz.
Hot dog, let's go!
Welcome to the Disabled Podcast, the show that incorporates disabilities with the magic of Disney. Welcome to episode number 12, entitled My Top Attractions. Be sure to use our hashtag the Disabled Podcast when sharing this podcast to all social media platforms. Now again, that's hashtag the Disabled Podcast when sharing this podcast to all of your social media platforms. And now, here is your host, Christian Reitz. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Disabled Podcast. Y'all, in this week's episode, we're going to talk all about some of my favorite Disney attractions at the Walt Disney World theme parks that you can do while remaining in a wheelchair. Now, of course, me as a fellow wheelchair user myself, there's a lot of things that I want to do, but there's also a lot of things that I really can't do. But no worries, Disney is so good at accessibility as far as their attraction goes, so I'm going to tell you today about some of the best attractions that you can do inside of a wheelchair. Now, before I begin, I do want to tell you that right now, live on the Disabled Podcast store is a brand new, for the holidays specifically, brand new for the holidays is a brand new ornament. Now, this ornament is of the Disabled Podcast logo, and you can check it out now. It is $7.59 right now on the Disabled Podcast store. So be sure to get yours today. It only takes about 24 hours of production time, so you're sure to get it pretty quickly before the holidays. But again, go check out the Disabled Podcast store for that and other products from the Disabled Podcast. So now, let's jump into today's episode. Now, let's start off at the Magic Kingdom. Now, for this one, I specifically want to mention 3 different attractions that you can actually do while remaining in your wheelchair or ECV. Now, one of the first ones I want to mention is in the kind of Fantasyland area leading towards Fantasyland, and that is the classic attraction, It's a Small World. This, of course, is a slow-moving boat ride, and you'll see a lot of animatronic dolls. In fact, back when Disneyland in California, way before it originally opened at the 1971 World's Fair, Walt Disney himself, that's actually one of the original attractions from the 1971 World's Fair and Disneyland. So that's actually the very first attraction. Now, for the way that this works with wheelchairs, again, it is a slow-moving boat ride, so you don't need to worry about transferring out of your wheelchair, unless you would like to, but they always offer for you to stay in your wheelchair. Now, for my friends in wheelchairs, there is a specific boat that you will get into when you get to the front of the line or to the front of the attraction. They'll ask you if you want to remain in your wheelchair. You can say yes or no. I highly recommend saying yes because I love that I don't get to transfer out of my wheelchair for this attraction. So what's going to happen is they're going to find a specific boat, and this is specifically just for you and your family. Now, if you're traveling with, say, 2 other people, it's you and 2 other people, they'll put other people on there with you. Now, what's going to happen is they're actually going to stop the boat. All the boats are going to stop, and they're actually going to wheel you on to the attraction boat. Now, they have a ramp that's going to wheel you right on, and you'll wheel down a little tiny ramp to the front of the boat, and you'll lock your brakes, and you'll remain there for the entirety of the ride. Now, don't worry, this is safe. This has been tested. I've even done this myself, and I can tell you that this is one of the best attractions for people in wheelchairs. And let's face it, even though you say you don't like the song, it's a world of laughter, a world of fear, it's a world of hope. Let's be honest. You like It's a Small World, you just don't want to admit it, right? Okay, maybe not. But anyway, but that is one of the top attractions that I recommend. In fact, that's the number 1 attraction I recommend for somebody in a wheelchair. Now, if we move on over to Fantasyland, there's another one that is called Ariel's Undersea Adventure. Now, this is also a ride that you can stay in your wheelchair for. And what they're going to do is they're actually going to put you into a clam mobile. So again, this Claymobile, it's actually not going to stop for you. It's again, because it's another slow-moving ride. What's going to happen is they're going to open up a little trap door Don't worry, it's not a trapdoor like you hear about in theater. They're gonna open up a little door, this little sliding ramp door, and you're gonna slide in there. They're gonna strap you and your person in. This is actually a two-person vehicle, so you and one of your fellow passengers can sit together in the ride. They're gonna strap you in with a seatbelt, just a little black belt that goes across your waist and goes across the attraction. And again, this attraction for me is one of my favorite attractions in the world. Number one, because it's air conditioned. By the way, It's a Small World is also air conditioned as well. But this slow moving boat ride, basically, the storyline is it takes you through the story of The Little Mermaid. So that's another one of my favorite attractions that you do not want to miss when you go to the Magic Kingdom. And now the third attraction that I want to talk to you guys about from the Magic Kingdom where you can remain in your wheelchair or ECV is Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin. Now, again, just like Ariel's Undersea Adventure and It's a Small World, what's going to happen is they're going to lower a little lift ramp down for you at the back of the ride vehicle. Again, this ride vehicle, usually you have to wait about 5 minutes or so. It'll be at the very end of the line. The cast member will then lower down the ramp for you to slide on in. They will strap you in your wheelchair, usually by little hooks. Then they'll close the door. Now, one of the main concern is for the interactive portion of the ride. Now, this is a game that you get to play where you shoot little targets and you get to help save the galaxy from the evil Emperor Zurg. Now, one of the main concerns, again, of this ride is that it's too tall for the gun. Now, for me personally, being shorter than the gun, I have found that there's actually no problem for myself when getting the laser gun. Again, it is attached to the vehicle, so you can't pop it off like you would at the one in Disneyland, at Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters in Disneyland. So again, those are just some things you want to think about when going on Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin. Now, when it comes to attractions that you have to transfer out of your wheelchair on, there's really a lot of attractions that you have to when it comes to the Magic Kingdom. For instance, like Space Mountain, and a few other attractions. But one of my favorite attractions to transfer out of my wheelchair on that I actually don't mind transferring out of my wheelchair on is Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, of course, Pirates of the Caribbean is based off of the Johnny Depp movies, Pirates of the Caribbean 1, 2, and 3. And I don't know, is there a fourth one? Why don't you Disney fans tell me? I haven't really seen a lot of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Tell me if there's a fourth one. But again, it's based off the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Now, the reason why they don't allow you to roll onto the ride vehicle in your wheelchair is because of a few different drops that they have in the ride. So again, you just want to make sure that when picking attractions where you want to remain in your wheelchair or ECV, you just look at the park map or on the My Disney Experience app on your iPhone or your Android device and figure out, right there in that device, you can actually figure out where all the accessible attractions are. And again, towards the end of this video, I will tell you where to navigate to find all of that stuff. So now let's move on to Hollywood Studios. Now, in Hollywood Studios, there's actually not a whole lot of attractions that you can do while remaining in your wheelchair. But one of my favorite attractions is actually in Toy Story Land, and that is Toy Story Midway Mania. Now, this, of course, is another interactive attraction, just like Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin in the Magic Kingdom, where you will have your own accessible vehicle, and they'll strap you in the same way that they do it at Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin. But instead, this time, they'll do it from the front and from the back. So they'll strap you in, just like they do for the buses that go from the parks to the resorts and into the water parks, into Disney Springs. Now, this attraction is another, again, it's another fast attraction because it does whip you from game to game. But this is more of it's more of like a carnival style type of games with Woody, Jesse, Buzz, Rex, and all the Toy Story gang. And again, you're just trying to rack up points and trying to beat the person that is next to you in the car. So again, this is one of those two-person kind of attractions where you get to sit in with the person next to you. They'll go in first, and then you'll go right in second. So now let's move on to Animal Kingdom. Now, in Animal Kingdom, there are very few limited attractions that you can do while remaining in your wheelchair. In fact, there's actually one of them that I actually just found out on one of my last trips to Walt Disney World that you can actually remain in your wheelchair for, and that is the Kilimanjaro Safari. Now, if you're an animal lover like myself and you love looking at different kind of animals and going to like zoos and seeing all different kinds of wildlife, Kilimanjaro Safari is perfect for you. Now, what they're gonna do in Kilimanjaro Safari is they're gonna strap you down. They're gonna open the door to your own caravan. You'll sit at the front, usually right behind the person that's driving the vehicle and telling you all about the animals. And they'll strap you in again, just like they would do on Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin or Toy Story Midway Mania in Hollywood Studios. Whether it's in Magic Kingdom or in Hollywood Studios, they'll strap you in the exact same way. So they'll strap you in from the front, they'll lock you in place, and they'll lock you in from the back. You do have to make sure that for each of these attractions that I'm talking about, from Hollywood Studios to Magic Kingdom to Animal Kingdom, that you do lock your brakes as well, so that way you don't go flying around, because Kilimanjaro Safari in the Animal Kingdom is one of those rides where it does go off road the entire time. So you're going over bumps, cracks, and different rocks and different uneven surfaces in the vehicle. So you want to make sure that you are safe as possible. So when you get in the vehicle, they'll make sure you're strapped in, make sure your brakes are locked, and you're good to go. And I promise this is one of those attractions that you are sure to love. Now, this attraction, the wait time for this attraction does build up over time throughout the day. So you want to make sure that you go kind of towards park closing, where usually there's about a 45-minute wait to an hour-long wait. And so now let's talk about the final park, and that is Epcot. Now, of course, in Epcot, again, there's not as much to do for people in wheelchairs. I mean, for me personally, when I think about transferring and not transferring out of my wheelchair, one of the non-transferable rides, or one of the rides that that I have to transfer out of my wheelchair for, is for like Frozen Ever After with Anna, Elsa, Olaf, Kristoff, and all of their friends. And there's a few other attractions like Spaceship Earth or Mission Space or Figment that I will have to transfer out of my wheelchair to experience this attraction. Now, a couple of the highlights though for the attractions that I do not have to transfer for, and you, when you go to Epcot, will not have to transfer out of your wheelchair for as well, is the Moana Journey of Water attraction, which is basically a walkthrough attraction, or as I like to call it, it's a roll through attraction. I know it sounds pretty cheesy, but it's a roll through attraction, and basically you get to play with all different types of water experiences. So you'll get to it's actually one of the most interactive experiences in any of the Walt Disney World theme parks, in my opinion. Now, there's also one more attraction that's actually located in the World Showcase at the France Pavilion, and that is Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. Now, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure is a 4D experience. So what's going to happen is that you're going to get 4D glasses to experience this attraction. And basically what it is that you get to go with Remy and all of his friends through the kitchen experience that's from the movie. And basically, it's just a cool ride. It's a cool 4D experience ride that I love doing. Now, what's going to happen with that ride when it comes to getting on the ride in your wheelchair is that actually a cast member at the end of the ride is going to pull you over to the side, and it's going to give you your own personal vehicle. It's actually going to be lined up in the row of vehicles as they go by. Now, one of the cool things about this attraction that I do want to mention here is that this is one of those free-flowing attractions. So, just like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, there's no track. It's all kind of like GPS-enabled attraction. So, again, everybody's experience may not be the same as you go on the attraction. So, you might go through different doors at certain times. Again, it's one of those attractions you just got to be there to experience it for yourself and to see exactly what I'm talking about. But what's going to happen on this ride is, again, they're going to pull you to the side and they're going to give you your own cart. Now, again, like all the other attractions that I mentioned, where you can stay in your wheelchair or ECV, what's going to happen is they're going to strap you in from the front and the back, and you want to make sure that you have your brakes locked for maximum safety. And again, make sure you have your 4D glasses to experience this incredible attraction. Well, guys, that's all the time I have for this week's episode of the Disabled Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, guys, for this week's episode. Again, next week, and actually I'll go and say this now, next week is the final episode of Season 2 of the Disable Podcast. Now, again, just a recap of some of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. Be sure to go check out the Disable Podcast merch store for your Christmas ornament. You don't want to miss it, guys. We've got some incredible things coming up that you don't want to miss. But you can also get that and other products from the Disable Podcast merch store. Be sure to also go like us on Facebook and go subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify so that you don't miss a moment of the fun. Well, again, that's all the time I have for this week's episode of the Disable Podcast. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see ya
Real soon.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Disable Podcast. Be sure to use our hashtag the Disable Podcast, when sharing this podcast to all of your social media platforms. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see ya real soon.